I think a lot of it had to do with the fact of January 6th that we had a lot of family that, and we had a lot of friends for that matter, people we'd known a long time that after January 6th happened and the arrest and the SWAT team raid by the Joint Terrorism Task Force happened at my house. We had people that were diehard Republicans, Trump supporters, good men and women in the community that, with obvious reservations about having their children come and be at my home. I don't know if your home's going to get raided again. What's going on? It was a tumultuous time and it was difficult for people and they were fearful. And I think because of that uh, inherent fear, it changed the way the world worked. And even in our community, and people were scared. The January 6th community was being marginalized. People's businesses were being um, doxxed. Individuals were being doxxed. The ongoing display of force by the Biden Harris Democrat machines regime was in full scale attack mode. And I think reminiscent of Nazi Germany, people were keeping their head down and you avoided those that were experiencing persecution. You didn't want to be tied to them because people remember that, German citizens that serve the interest of the Jewish community were also taken to camps, just the same. So I think that was a similar mindset, and it was designed to silence all dissent, silence all dissenters, knowing everyone shut up about this election, or else, you'll be removed from the airways if you're a journalist. You'll be marginalized if you're an individual in a business. Your home life, your structure, everything you have will be destroyed. And we will do that with this jackbooted thuggery like never seen before.
Warning, some viewers may find the following footage deeply disturbing.
Fucking genius.
So, because of that, you had these personal experiences that individuals came to know as, the victims of that in many cases. I'm not suggesting that nobody did anything wrong in some context, but I think you have to recognize that 99% of the people, January 6th, 1,200 of these people were only charged with misdemeanors, right? And they were the four standard misdemeanors of that were overburdensome charges for protesters, for demonstrators, right? And the DOJ was all too happy to carry this methodology through to what I would call kangaroo and corrupt courts in many cases. So I won't say for every single case, but I'm going to say 99.9% of the cases held that experience. And then additionally, then you had the people that had some level of felony issue. I was one of those. I had the 1512, that's been thrown out by the Supreme Court for all practical purposes. And, there was some nonsense, but Ketanji Brown Jackson's joining with the affirmative and suggesting that there were going to be reasons why these cases would be upheld. There was not a destruction of documents or an effort to subvert the use of documents. This was a demonstration that got out of hand, that had riotous components. There's no doubt, but the reality is not what you were told by mainstream media and the government. And it's odd to me, Kurt, if I were to talk to, and I think you would share this experience. If I walked into a room full of Democrats and asked them if they trust the government, the answer is resoundingly no. If I ask them if they trust the media, the answer is again resoundingly no. However, as soon as something comes on TV that's in support of your party or your ideology, people want to point to the TV and say, see, there it is right there. So and so is reporting on it. This must be true. And that's not the way the world works. That is the fallacy that upholds the ideology of certain factions of this government and individuals and naiveties of individuals within the United States. And those things still to this day have not been resolved in a meaningful way for the American public to have a factual and accurate grasp on said reality.
So
Sorry,
Treniss,
I digress.
no, it's great, and let's kind of break this down a little bit and get some background on your story and understand the human experience with this from a very personal level. You were on January 6th, 2021. You go to Washington D.C. what was that all about? What were you trying to do? What were you trying to accomplish? Why were you there? When did you go? Who you're there with? That kind of thing. Tell us a little bit of, paint the picture of that experience.
Sure. Well, according to the United States government, as it has been recently, I'm a domestic terrorist that was there to overthrow the nation's government at the seat of the capital, right? The seat of our government. That's what's said.
That's the
And yeah,
story that's told, right? But
sure.
what was really going on? What was the actual story? I mean, what
Yeah,
yeah. Who were you at the time? What were you doing for a living? Did you
sure.
have a wife
Yeah, let
and
me.
kids? I mean,
Yeah, I
yeah.
was the volunteer golf coach for the junior high and the high school. I was the person that was serving the interests of the community in many ways. I'm look, and I always say, I don't claim to be out here walking little old ladies across the street every day and operate as some saint, right? That's not me.
Sure.
I'm not your pastor. I'm not your salvation. And neither is Donald Trump or anyone else, right? We got to look a little higher than a 757 if you're seeking salvation. So
Right. We're all
anyway,
three-dimensional human beings. We all have
yeah,
our
there you go.
faults. We all have our things that
Yeah,
we're trying to do. Yeah. But
absolutely. So I've
we want
been
to find the truth in all of this. And the truth is in the human experience too, and what the government does and how they change that and dehumanize. Yeah.
so right. And that's an easy way to do it, right? We place labels on individuals. You suggest that people are something that they may just not be. And let me paint this picture. I was a largely apolitical individual until Donald Trump came on the scene. As a matter of fact, I didn't vote for him in 2016 because I assumed, and my assumption was proven incorrect, which I'm thankful for, that he was just another piece of the political machine that was going to get in there, do nothing, make no attempt, a bunch of empty promises, another windbag that was going to subvert the interest of the American people and those that voted for him and carry out probably little to absolutely nothing of what they ran on, because that's the status quo. It's what we come to expect of our politicians. So people pick them for the pretty smile, or they pick them because they somehow align with some faith value or some other individual ideology, right? And
Yes.
that's what it boils down to in American
And a
politics.
lot of
It's
people
nothing
have,
like,
yeah,
yeah,
that's a typical story of people that kind of lean right or libertarian. A lot of people were not enamored by Donald Trump. They didn't see
I don't,
the
I don't know,
fervor of it in
no, didn't
2016.
do it for me. As a
Yeah.
matter of fact, didn't even draw my vote in 2016. I watched. I
Me
wasn't
neither. I didn't
disappointed,
vote
or
for him
I
either.
didn't feel disenfranchised by the gentleman in his first term. I then watched his first term, and I saw somebody actually do what they said they were going to do. And I got to admit, I admit to being wrong at the beginning. I said, "Holy smokes, this guy is actually doing what he said he would do." I'm watching a platform attempt to play out, but we're being blocked by our own people. I mean, you had
Mhm.
the House, you had the Senate, and somehow these efforts that we the people put you in office to do, not only the president but these legislators, were being blocked and subverted and pushed back on at every turn. And the bureaucrats were doing their damage, and they're slow walking, and something goes into action and they slow walk it to the other end. And essentially, they are the conduit. Once something goes through the House, through the Senate, and signed by the president, and it goes into law, and becomes effective into law, then suddenly it has to actually trickle out to the people. And the bureaucrats were a substandard process in our machine of what is supposed to be in our democratic system of government that they say under our constitutional republic, right?
Mhm. Sure.
So scary how that was able to happen, and we become hyper aware of how bad the bureaucracy actually is and its control and stranglehold on the American people, and to subvert the will of the American people and duly elected
And
individuals.
encourage, outright encourage um, violence and during the lockdowns, the
Yeah.
shutdowns, and BLM and that
Well,
sort of thing.
then come along and enter COVID and the nonsense that happened there, right?
Mhm.
So you have a frustrated constituency. You have a frustrated United States of America. You got half the country ready to put people like me in camps because I refuse to get a so-called vaccine, bioweapon, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
right? And what's proven to be true, you have people like me that I didn't know what hydrochloroquine was. I didn't know what ivermectin was. I didn't know these things.
Hmm.
And then I opened my mind to listening to both sides of the story, right? I mean, of course, I saw what Fox News had to say, and you're in the local store getting a haircut, and you've got CNN or ABC or somebody on, and they're talking about the pandemic of the unvaccinated and all these things,
Hmm.
and you're killing grandma, it's your fault, et cetera, et cetera. And so let's run this down. So you move through this time, right? You become aware of these issues. These things start to play out. And you start seeing things and you're asking questions. Why are we sending the sick back to the nursing homes? Why are we doing certain actions? Why are these things like in New York, what we saw with Cuomo? And you start asking questions and you start looking into this and you start seeking third party information. And you find that scientists, doctors, people that highly respected in their field are not being allowed to have a voice. And that creates great question. I don't like when people silence even dissent, rather it be something I subject myself to and like, or something that the other side of the story, because in I believe it was Justice Brandy said the answer to free speech or more speech that the speech that you don't like is more speech. And born of the idea of the freedom of speech, right? And I may be wrong on the quote, forgive me, but more importantly, the quote's correct, right? The answer to the Supreme Court justice that stated that the answer to speech you don't like is more speech. This reality came to pass. So without belaboring this, I'll say this. You quickly could see that there was a problem. There was somebody else trying to get you something outside of the institutionalized acceptance, and you came aware of this other side of the coin. And now I am driven to want to know more because my experience with the government, what I know of the government, telling the truth, lying to the people, subversion, deceit, many other problems, and we'll leave it there. But I think we're hyper aware of that. This is a government that cannot be trusted throughout history. They've often lied to the American people and they continue to do so. So
Along with the
then,
mainstream media apparatus and their efforts to
which,
reinforce
right,
all of those
which was only
narratives.
increased, exponentially after Obama repealed or what they call modernized the Smith-Mundt Act, which enabled essentially a state-sponsored terror campaign to operate through
Smith,
the idea.
what is this act? What is
The
this?
Smith-Mundt Act was 1957 or 53. The
Okay.
Smith-Mundt Act is what kept the state from controlling media for propaganda purposes. That's why we didn't have propagandized media here. The modernization of the Smith-Mundt Act under Obama enabled what you saw with the big tech, where the collusion between administration, government actors controlled the narratives, shut down the dissent of the conservative voices and doctors and individuals that were providing real, relevant, viable, truthful, scientifically proven information about things like hydrochloroquine and ivermectin. And a lot of people shut down when you say that because this is the conspiracy theory realm, right? They're
I
wrong.
took ivermectin when I got COVID, and it was amazing. Within a couple
Mhm.
hours, I felt so much better. I thought I was dying. It's definitely a bioweapon of some sort because every day was a different set of symptoms, and so I
Oh,
personally took it. And it
sickest I'd
wasn't.
ever been.
I didn't take horse tranquilizer. I took or horse pills or whatever they call it. I took
Or storm,
like
right?
human version of ivermectin. But yeah, that's so
Oh.
this story is insane. The way that this is all transpired, the truth is coming out on a lot of these issues. But we get to January 6th, 2021, and you go to the
Yeah,
Capitol.
let me break that down. Okay, so let me get on into that. So you get the idea. So this is the America we all have to take us back to the date and time and place we lived, right? Half the country's wearing a mask, and once you're thrown in a camp, if you refuse to get a vaccine or show your papers, right, for to gain access to a restaurant or a theater or a ball game, what have you, right? Concert, you're not allowed, right? I always laugh. Even our punk bands, our pushback people, Rage Against the Machine are requiring vaccine
Yeah,
paperwork to come in. I
the
was like,
rage
wow.
against the rage against the machine at
Yeah,
that point.
yeah.
Yeah, just
Rage for the Machine regime was
rage.
what they became in my mind. But moving on.
That's right.
So
Just
anyway,
another group of people that are manipulated. They're coerced and hoaxed.
yeah,
It's
it's sad.
unfortunate.
it's sad to see this could happen at this time in our country, right? So, all right, so here we go. So, January 6th, 2021, I was a frustrated American, damn pissed off, and rightfully so. The problems with this election and what happened, you can't make it up. And the nonsense now with the deficit and the actual number of voters and Joe Biden and what we've learned about machines, what we've learned about individuals, what we've seen. I mean, God bless Rudy Giuliani, and he's endured this fire from these individuals. I'm shocked. But of course, these trials and things happen in Washington, D.C., and that's why they win, right? Because everything leftist wins in D.C. You got Hillary Clinton's lawyer gets tried in D.C., gets off scot free, nothing wrong, dead to rights. You know, these things just unbelievable. The machine is designed around a governmental agency that operates as judiciary with the backing of the full backing of its lackeys, the 93% Democrat voting machine of jurors. And that's the reality. So moving on. All right. So now we have, we're here January 6th. I've been to November and I've been to December. And I witnessed what happened when groups like Antifa infiltrated events and brought harm. I witnessed people that claimed to be BLM supporters, and I'm not so sure that they were actual BLM, that stabbed people. And those things happen. I was present when that happened. And
You actually
November.
saw somebody get stabbed at a
Yeah, I was there.
BLM event.
I was there when Bertino got stabbed. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, I
Wow.
was there.
That's
So
what
I
was
was
it?
standing 50 feet
Stabbed
from
by,
it when it, yeah, less than 50 feet away from it when it happened. So
that's horrific.
yeah,
There
this
was a
was
lot
what
of
was going
violence during
on.
that time. They were killing police officers at BLM riots.
They were kettling
They
them. They
were
were
gunning them
calling them
down.
in for certain things and then
Yeah.
killing them. They were executing them in California. People have forgotten all this
No, no, there was
because
that
it's all been
video
wiped away
where they
by the
walk up
January
and
6th
shoot.
narrative. Yes.
Absolutely. There's all that video evidence, but it's not ever really
Well, the mainstream media never wanted to talk about
they never
it. It
yeah, they
made the
never
paper and it washed away, and that was the end of it, right? They had a report and it was over because it wasn't appeasing to the powers that be.
and
And
they
we
were
can go on about,
dehumanizing police officers and that
well,
you know,
of
so it was
course they were.
justified in some sort of sense.
Well, they needed this massive upset, right? They needed the
Mhm.
police scared of actually dealing with violent people. They needed, like the guy in New York that's in trial now, they need people scared to stand up. You had the farmer, the rancher that shoots illegals on his property in the dead of night. And what happens? He's then tried, right? These are the cases. Individuals are tried for protecting their homes under what should be castle laws and their rights and freedoms to
Yeah.
protect them and their family and their property. And
Mhm.
you're now, so if they can't take away your Second Amendment, they can't legislate it away. They make you scared to own one or use one, right? That's the
When we
idea.
talk about we're talking about the establishment government and the mainstream media working together. That's what we're
And back
talking
to
about.
why the Smith-Month Act being
That's Montag. That's
changed or
correct.
what they call
That's
modernized by
I
the
learned
Obama
something today. I
administration.
love that. So thank you for that. And we'll
Yeah,
put that
well,
into
thank you.
notes for sure. It's great.
Well, that's
I'll have
good.
to look
I'm
into.
glad to share that with you. So, all
So
right. So we keep
so
moving.
you're
January 6th, I'm there. I go to the rally.
tons of
I'm at the
people
event.
there,
There's
thousands
over
of
a million
people,
people present. You can
million
look at
people.
the
Okay.
photos. Yeah, you can
Right.
look at the photos of the aerial
Right.
photos of the event. And so they'll regularly, you got to think the DC regularly says in attendance for 4th of July festival on the National Mall, where over 600,000 people came today. And you look at the sparse spacing, right, where they're laid out on blankets and lawn chairs, and everybody's looking up at the sky and they're watching it.
People are
And
having a good time.
yeah, they
They're
talk about, oh,
frustrated,
200,000
but they're
people present for this event.
right.
And look at that. Look how the people are spaced in the area they cover. And then you look at January 6th, and they're shoulder to shoulder, wall to wall, from the ellipse to the National Monument, and in
Mhm.
both directions, as far as the eye can see. Video after video supports this. But yet the
Right.
government tells you that it was only tens of thousands of people. That's what they said,
Right.
right? Tens of
Okay.
thousands of Trump
Yep.
supporters. And we're somehow these evil doers, right? That were there to subvert the democratic will of the American people.
January 6th
Strange.
report says January 6th, 20, this number one, January 6th, 2021 was a uniquely shameful day in U.S. history, warranted comprehensive congressional investigation. Donald Trump knew he had lost the 2020 election, and his response was to obstruct justice and lie about it
Yeah.
Tactics Trump employed included faking election certificates and influencing state legislators and the Justice Department. Trump summoned a violent mob. This is where we are today, what we're talking about, and a march on the Capitol, and delayed that, calling that off for 187 minutes. That was their report. And then they said, we can't charge them. We can't charge Trump, but we encourage others to do so. And then they, in Gestapo Gulag style, Russian paranoid Stalinist fashion, are putting American citizens into gulags in a
Well,
sense,
let's break it
indefinitely.
down factually. Let's go with the select committee's own evidence, right?
Mhm.
So they say 107 is where the breach happens, outer gates, right? These things, right? This is approximately what was happening. Trump was still speaking at the ellipse, right? That one happened. At 2:24, they claim the West Terrace fell because Trump issued the tweet that said Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what should have been done to protect our country and our Constitution, to give states a chance to certify a corrected set of facts, not the fraudulent or inaccurate ones they were previously asked to certify.
Mhm.
That was the tweet quote, word for word, right?
Right.
Um, and they've laid the fall of the Capitol Police line at 2:24 at Trump's feet. But what have we seen from there? What video exists to show what happened? You see Daniel Thau, Officer Daniel Thau, and others
Mhm.
running around manically deploying munitions illegally with an unauthorized abuse of power under the color of law being carried out by firing rubber bullets from above where people are packed in shoulder to shoulder. And these are designed to be torso only and below munitions because
Mhm.
the danger of the less than lethal munition of
It
these
can take you out.
flashbangs and canisters is not take your eye out, lethal.
It's
They
lethal.
become lethal.
Yeah, it could take you out for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I thought you said take your eye out. I was like, yes, yeah, yeah,
no,
take you
it
out.
can take you
Yes, they
out.
become a
Mhm.
lethal munition, as is seen in numerous training exercises and warnings on these munitions that can be lethal if improperly deployed, right?
Mhm.
It's on a freaking label on the side of the boxes they come in and on the apparatus themselves.
Mhm.
Yet the less than lethal team begins firing these. Now, who was there that day? Grandmas, grandparents, children, people
Mhm.
with strollers, right? And who else was there? Veterans, law enforcement off duty. These were the people in the crowd. So when the
And,
illegal,
and let me throw in there. Representative Clay Higgins said that there was over 200 FBI
oh yeah,
undercover
that was in the
yeah,
crowd, much less
in
what
the
was
crowd.
inside the building dressed as Trump
Per-
supporters in advance.
Well, and he suggested that they provoked entry into the Capitol, which
Suggested is a lightly used terminology, but good job. Good, yeah. I have great respect for Clay Higgins. I've had numerous conversations with the man one on one, and we have some very shared ideas and beliefs and interests in what has actually taken place for that day, and who is responsible. And we both have information on that that is conclusive, and there's more to come on that. So, like I said, I don't
Mhm.
withhold things with this bated breath, like follow me on, so you can see my next drop. I don't play that game. I'm
Right.
just telling you that timing is everything on certain things, and they're coming. These information will come to pass. But let me, there's a danger to certain information. And when you have United States congressmen tell you that they're fearful of the information they possess,
Mhm.
this apparatus, this machine would come for so many and ruin them. They'll plant things. I mean, you wake up with kitty porn on your computer, whatever, right?
Right. Sure.
And to be clear, I always remind I'm not suicidal. I love my wife and my children, and I'm
Well,
I don't stand on hotel balconies, and I don't take baths, especially not with toasters or hair dryers or any of those things. So, it's somebody,
you're a family man. You have a wife and
two
kids.
children, yeah,
You're
two
two
boys.
children, two boys, and you go into the Capitol building. Do you uh, do you have a pitchfork? Are you is there a torch? Are you going
I
after
forgot my
the
tar and
police? All
feathers.
these
Yeah.
MAGA supporters who were supporting the police now are suddenly going after the police. I mean, what's going on here? Is it total chaos and mayhem?
No,
What's
no. You can
happening?
watch the videos that I
You
have
climbing
available.
walls and
Look,
stuff? I mean,
yeah, go to my website and watch the videos. So
right.
what people saw there. So a lot of us came, I didn't even get to the Capitol grounds until just before 3 o'clock, right? I stayed and watched the whole speech. Then I went to, I love, look, there's people have said I'm the CIA. They say I'm the FBI. They say I'm the government, something, credentialed something or uncredentialed employee of the government, essentially. Okay, say
Sure.
what you will.
Sort of
You go
the
right ahead. That's
schizophrenic
fine.
misinformation, disinformation campaigns
Yeah.
that go on
Uh, I
anytime
mean,
to
there's no
try to
secret that my family
right.
was in an intelligence community. That's, where I came from. I was not in the intelligence community. That's not what I did. And that is not a part of my life. I obviously had many
So
an offer to go to work there, and I never took them up on that. I didn't
in
have
your
an
family,
interest in.
who is in the intelligence community in your family?
Well, that's another story. That's that. So
Okay, we
I'll
can
tell you
do
this,
it.
that
We can do another podcast and
yeah,
talk more
there's
about it.
there's nobody that's alive.
But okay,
So
yeah, fair
yeah.
enough.
So nobody that's alive isn't there. So anyway, let me say that. So I was not a legacy of that. I did not partake, I did not engage, and I was not involved. That's not what that was. So that misinformation, I get it. Look, people find things out. I'm not worried of that. I'm not running from that. I'm not scared of it because are you what your dad was? If your dad was a welder, it doesn't make you a welder. If your dad was a Marine, doesn't make you a Marine. So that's just the way that is. Moving on. So let me get this,
Sure.
help people understand this. When I arrived at the Capitol, I arrived at the Capitol with a backpack full of water bottles. This has been flushed out. The FBI is fully aware of this. It happens to be on video because I filled up my backpack from my trunk down in the
Mhm.
hotel parking lot. And the FBI was very interested. What was in your backpack? And I said, why don't you go watch the video at the Freedom Plaza Hotel where I was staying? Watch the surveillance video down in the parking lot, and you'll see what I was filling my backpack up with. It was granola bars, water bottles, and beef jerky. I'd been to Costco and bought like a case of these things and
Mm.
and trail mix. Oh God, don't let me forget the trail mix, the ever so
Yeah,
dangerous trail mix that I
dangerous
did.
materials for sure.
Yes, yes. I mean, I was I
Yeah,
was I was ready for battle, buddy. I had my
yeah.
granola, beef jerky,
Hydrate and
trail mix,
protein,
and
sure.
water. Yeah, we were. If anything, I could have been ready for a long-term sit-in.
Sure.
That's
Which
about.
they had uh, after Jan 6. The
Yeah.
left had a major sit-in crybaby session in the middle of the Capitol
Oh yeah.
building.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, this is how it works, right?
Right.
And I think I remind people that the people that gained access to places like Wisconsin in 2011, right? Michigan,
Mhm.
other places where they went in the
Right.
state capitol, state houses. Nancy
Yeah.
Pelosi was first on scene to recognize these people as pro-democratic, pro-democracy individuals, saying the people have spoken when they showed up and they were
Yeah.
there to interfere. These people specifically came with the purpose. I ask people, remember this. Do you remember what the media darling of the Democrats was for the last decade? It was the Occupy movement. We
That's right.
occupy Wall Street. You press forward, you get in, you
The
gain access to
DHL.
somewhere you're not supposed to be, unauthorized access to somewhere that you did not have the permission to be, that the people that
Heroes.
were responsible for the building didn't want you there. And they came in and they occupied the building and they
Hmm.
stayed there to subvert the will of whatever was going on in process there, whether it be the stock exchange or some governmental office or the Capitol or whatever else. Occupy movement was the media darling of the left, and it was recognized as the democratic, excuse me, will of the people. Now let's
Hmm.
point that out.
Sure.
Then let's take what was said about
They're
January
practicing
6th.
their First Amendment right.
Yeah. So you take what was said about January 6th. So you had people like me that get to the grounds after people were already there. People were coming back down the street saying, people are doing this, people are doing that. And you're like, wow, people are protesting in the Capitol. And somebody said, well, the police are telling people they can't go closer. I didn't hear this till after I saw this in the video, right? But I saw some of this stuff where people were saying people are protesting in the inside the Capitol. I was like, awesome. All right, good for them. I'm all for it. We should protest. And this is where, so I've had people use these like short clips of Treniss saying this and Treniss saying that. I'm like, play the whole video. Why not? Why do you play 8 seconds of me? Because you
It's
want to
normal.
undermine me, because you want to
Of course.
undermine something that's a reality. You don't want to tell the truth when you want to play 8 seconds. It's Twitter, man. It's the internet. Show the whole video. Show us a 2 minute version. But we don't see that version. We see 8 seconds. Why? Because we want to clip something subjectively to make people believe what's not true. But that's okay. We know who you are, and some of them are just carrying the fool's errand, right? They don't even know they're carrying water for the communist, if you will. They're on a fool's errand, and that's okay. We can't help those that are of lesser minds that can't seem to figure these things out. It's not my interest. I don't really care. They're unimportant and they're insignificant individuals. They will never be significant in history, and they will never mean anything to me. But what does mean something to me is the kind of men that were veterans in law enforcement. It's the kind of men like Ronald Maccabee that when they were beating individuals and Roseanne Boylan was laying dying on the Capitol steps, that this was the kind of man that went forward and said, "Stop what you're doing. I'm an off-duty sheriff, and what's happening here is wrong. You're killing people. You got to stop." Because he knew the law, he knew the rules, he knew what the abuse of power under the color of authority was, and he had the courage to stand up to a massive police and say, "Stop." He didn't harm anyone, he didn't beat anyone, he didn't do anything nasty, he didn't even speak nasty words, and he's sitting in prison today
Mm.
because they have hemmed up the narrative and made it so. And corrupt judges like Judge Emmett Sullivan and some of the others that sit in those DC benches that have actual Trump derangement syndrome. And I wrote this in a motion that I filed with the court recently. If you don't believe it, I tell people this: grow some balls, and you tell me when you have the balls to tell a federal judge that holds you in their hand that they have Trump derangement syndrome. You show me that set of balls and we'll be on the same side. Until then, I'm really not interested in what you're doing. Right? You probably should line up and follow some of the courageous people. And I'm not even suggesting myself. I'm talking about the General Flynn's. I'm talking about the Ronald Maccabees. I'm talking about the David Summeralls that have testified in 10 cases, right? The people that have stood in this breach and continued to move forward, regardless of what's come for them. I may be one of them. Don't follow me. Don't believe me. Go follow somebody else. Go believe someone else. But get in line somewhere. Because if you're not doing, you better be supporting because it's your country, your future generations, your children's lives, and the asses that you're going to be looking down the line going, I should have done something. Why didn't I do something? Why did I allow this to stand? I mean, they've done it and people just don't get it. Like I don't know how you can still be lost. The idea can be lost on you. School board moms, right? People that went to the school board and spoke out against something. They literally
Mhm.
spoke in public at a school board. They didn't threaten anyone. They simply brought attention to something and the FBI is investigating them. People that pray outside an abortion clinic are sent to prison. If you burn a BLM flag, you go to prison for a hate crime. But if I burn a Trump 2024 flag or an American flag or any other flag, that's all my freedom of speech. When is the American public waking up? And I think this more than half the American public did wake up in mass because look who's president elect. Look what's about to happen on January 20th, 2021,
There's a mandate
2025.
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
The American
just
people
just to kind
spoke
of
up.
just to kind of wrap up,
Yeah.
what what happened? So it's November 2024.
Yeah.
What happens at this point? Uh, national talk show host Mike Church of the Crusade Channel said recently that we should not give no quarter. And in other words, we need to hold people's feet to the fire, and there needs to be some action taken to correct this situation, not against individual Americans, but the people in power. And so, what does that look like? And can you give us any insight on that?
Yeah. I'm going to give it to you real straight. If you don't, right now, because I want you to look back over the last 25, 30, 40 years. All right. Who stood in the gap? Show me the person that was really there for you. Do you think it was the Bushes? I mean, come on, let's get real.
Yeah,
Like, we've learned a lot, right? So I'm
you
telling
had
you
maybe
right now, this is
Congressman Ron Paul, you had Rand Paul, possibly just a few congressmen,
yeah,
Thomas Massey, maybe Mike Lee,
not many,
not
not
many.
many.
Yeah.
Now, probably since the activity of, McCarthy, we're talking 1950s McCarthy, not Kevin McCarthy now, right?
Sure.
You haven't
McCarthyism.
seen a reality in this country outside of a handful of people. You haven't seen a movement to set course correction or a communist takeover in this nation. If you're
Mhm.
not aware now, when you're watching your children march through the streets through the indoctrination campaign of these institutionalized ideas that are carried out by our college campuses, and thank God for Charlie Kirk and some of that pushback, right? Because we finally have
Mhm.
somebody out there doing something different, Turning Point and others. If you
Mhm.
don't address this in this administration, if you want to go through and you play patty cake and you want to reach across the aisle, these people have, you cannot reach across the aisle and attempt to coexist with people that want to imprison you. That doesn't
Mhm.
work. It is not time for patty cake. It is time. This isn't retribution. It's not revenge. It's justice has to be served. And let me
Mhm.
remind you of a simple statement that was said to probably about every January 6th defendant that went through the DC courts. We have to do this to make sure something like this never happens again. Oh, I agree. You have the right terminology and the wrong application. We're going to have to do what we're going to have to do in the next 4 years to make sure something like this never happens again. So they can shove that up under their corrupt robes and let that be their new puppet master ideology. Because if it was good for the goose, it's going to be good for the gander, right? But what the mistake is if we try these people in DC, trials have to be moved. This cannot stand. We're going to have to make these moves and make these changes and not try people in DC because they're going to walk. Everyone will walk. I don't care what they did. If you had pictures of them molesting children on the courthouse steps, that DC jury will find the leftist not guilty. You got to move the
Mhm.
trials. You got to have these trials elsewhere. And look, there's no great advantage. It's just not about having an advantage. It's about having an equitable jury that doesn't just give free passes to Democrats and instantly crucify Republicans or
Mhm.
conservatives. Now, if it's not done, you're building a rubber band right now. This rubber band effect is happening, and it's going to snap back and hit the conservative American. Because you think these people are done? You don't
Mhm.
think for 1 second, Kurt. I know you don't. But don't let anyone be operating under the mistaken ideology that the Democrat globalist antichrist machine is in any way giving up or ceding concede or conceding their position. They're digging in, they're preparing, and they're going to come for you. And if you don't get that and you think that this is some kind of political hyperbole, you really just haven't caught on to what's happening here yet. This is a machine. It is massive and it way outweighs you and it way outweighs the future generations. It is coming to undermine, give total control to a group and whisk away everything you ever thought about. People say, well, then why didn't they stop us from constitutional rights? They didn't have to. They didn't have to outlaw free speech. They didn't have to outlaw the Second Amendment because they were able to run a fear campaign, exercise control over your rights. And let me ask you, most people are shaking their heads right now saying they shouldn't have put those people in jail. We shouldn't have done this. This shouldn't have happened. The J6 people, most of those people were peaceful. Those people shouldn't have gone to prison for first offense misdemeanors. They did the same thing that other people did, and they're all walked and win settlements. $4.3 million won by the ACLU for the January 20th, 2017 people that literally marched through the streets of DC saying they would not allow Trump to take office on the only day that actually a transfer of power takes place, not the mythical version of January 6th. It's a ceremonial concept that never had anything to do with the transfer of power, which is
Mhm.
ridiculous. And they know it. Now, let me paint this and let me pull this into perspective. If you actually think that what I'm doing here, and I'm spending my time here with Mr. Wallace, I'm spending my time talking to you, the American public, to puff up my own chest or to drive interest in my clicks and links and likes and follows, you're just not getting it. I don't care. I need to reach more people. We need to reach more people. The actual reality needs to sink in with more people. I don't want to go on retribution. I don't want to burn people at the stake. I want to give people a chance to come back from playing the game they played. I do want to allow some quarter in some sense. If you didn't know what you were doing, you made a mistake and you didn't realize what this was, but you had information, come forward. Now whistleblowers won't be persecuted. They were persecuted under this administration, FBI whistleblowers and others. Now come forward. Now is your time because there are task force operations. And I'm proud to say that I'm highly aware of the extremely sensitive nature of those task force operations. They are coming to pass and they will be flushing out who, where, what, and when. Not for us, we already know in many cases. We have information we're looking for still, but those task force operations have already been assigned. The
Mhm.
people have already been looking, and there they're going to have official title. And they're coming for those that did the dirty deeds. And when those dirty deeds are exposed, when the people get to see what actually happened here, there's going to be a reckoning. And that reckoning is going to be a legal, lawful reckoning. This isn't something that's to take it
Mhm.
to the streets. We're not the Democrats. We're not looking for
Right.
street justice. We're looking for lawful use, recourse for illegal action, and accurately provided information to be discerned through for discernment through the American public and the future of this country to be saved because we cannot have a party that operates by creating such fear in any kind of dissent or discussion of this free speech that people are afraid to stand for their voice and be heard. That should be allowed in peaceful protest. I don't care what you believe in. You have a right to stand for it. If you want to believe in God knows what under this green earth, and you want to stand up and peacefully espouse that, I support your rights, although I may not agree with you. That is what's important. But there is a certain group, and we've watched them operate now for 4 years, and that's going to
Mhm.
come to an end, and they're going to pay for the injustice. This is happening. This administration is not going to be playing patty cake. I see them looking at the administration as it's forming up. People are frustrated. Just be patient. Watch what happens here. There are people that are coming to the rescue in this administration. And if they do everything right up front where everybody can see it, it may give a little quarter to these people or less fear.
Mhm.
I'm not suggesting that there's some massive operation going on of white hats. Don't get me confused with the QAnon ideology or what have you. I'm
But
giving you
just going after
factual.
people that violated the rights of other people, that abuse of power. That's the main thing, is to stop the abuse of power and eliminate their ability to do it in the future. That's also very important.
It's
And
coming to a
where
close now. It's all
where
coming
can
to a close now. It's out ahead.
where can people contact you or submit information?
So I would say this. We have a website at condemnedusa.com. You can find the website there. You can send information in on the info page. If you have something sensitive for some reason, you're for whatever reason a part of the government, we have the right people to send you to for that. I would say that I don't hold an official title and I don't want you to send me something. I want you to send that. And look, these people know. Those people know what the proper channels are. So honestly, I would say for the most part, if it's your viewers and you saw it on some show somewhere, it's not. We already know. Okay, yeah. Don't Please don't send us that. We're aware. Okay. What I'm suggesting is, um, there are actions underway, and I'm not trying to complain to be part of some big secret white hat operation that's going on, but people do exist that are doing these things that we're watching. We know what happened in the elections, we know what happened elsewhere, and I'm not read into everything. I don't see everything that happens. I'm not trying to paint myself in some light, but I'm telling you that I talked to enough people, and we won't discuss who at this time, Kurt, but you know who I was on the phone with this morning for an hour before we talked. And if people go look, you can go look at my Supreme Court work. Follow Condemned USA. Go look at what we've done in the Supreme. We did in Colorado. I was read into every Trump case that came down the line. I had all of the evidence and made suggestions and was a resource to the attorneys. There's a reason for that. I'm not an attorney. So what was I doing there? And why was I involved in those cases? It's public knowledge. You can go and see it. The affidavits, the information, the court cases. If you search, I believe if you search condemned USA, just the words, the first thing that comes up is Supreme Court victories. So I urge people to go look for themselves. Don't take my word for it. Please go look it up, investigate. And then the people that undermine that effort, just remind you that one of the big underminers of that I already sued and beat for defamation. And they've already paid the price for defaming me. And I beat him in a DC court where a judge actually recognized me as someone that took part in the January 6th insurrection, and the individual still lost. Now, that's pretty silly. Now, I want to remind people of this. If you're watching 8-second clips of why someone's bad, ask where the rest of the video is and consider who's the source. That is usually not a good sign. If all you have, do you mean to tell me you filmed something in life, you turned on your cell phone for 8 seconds and filmed it? It's usually a little longer than that. My experience, I don't film much in my life for 8 seconds. And so if it's an 8-second clip of someone's so-called dirty deeds for 30 seconds, I would have great question about the provider of that information and what their purpose is, and then look at the history of the individual and what they do, who they are, who their attachments are, who validates and stands up for them, and then look at the attachments of the other, and then ask, then you know what, come to your own conclusion. I think it'll help.
Treniss Evans, thanks for spending some time with me today and sharing your story.
Kurt, if I could throw one more thing, I'm so sorry. I have to selflessly and shamelessly remind people that I have a new best-selling book. Call it Insurrection Comrade.
You
The
have another
book,
book coming out, correct?
and I have another one coming, and
Yep.
this one is endorsed by General Michael Flynn, and the foreword is by Laura Logan. So I would consider the resources of who I work with and who supports my work and knows me well enough to attach themselves to me for all of time and has that kind of history with me versus the resources elsewhere that seem to say otherwise. And do your own investigation. Read the book and go read the court documents. You know, as a matter of fact, Kurt, I've placed the entirety of the unredacted court documents. Now, remember, the government redacted hundreds of pages. I fought and got them unredacted, and they're now publicly available and available on the website. And I've charged you $0. You don't even have to give me your email to collect and read those court documents. Once you read those, I think it sheds a lot of light on who I am, what I stand for, and where I intend to take this country if I'm allowed any hand in the battle.
Well, thank you for your time today.
Thanks for having me, Kurt. Take care. Have a great day.
Fucking genius.